Lately, I'm seeing so much chatter about AI and how bad AI and how eventually everything is just going to be AI and we're all going to be subservient slave man beings to Skynet. But before we go into the dark ages, I figured I'd use ChatGPT to try and figure out one of Jujutsu Kaisen's greatest mysteries. What on earth could Yuta Okkotsu's domain expansion be or do? And then once we figure that out, I'll use what the AI gives us to pit Yuta Okkotsu in a 1v1 fight against Kenjaku, using all of the new information that we have about Kenjaku and our new theoretical information from ChatGPT. So I took my little ass over to ChatGPT's website and I typed in this question: write a description of what Yuta Okkotsu's domain expansion can do in Jujutsu Kaisen. And this is the answer it gave me. In Jujutsu Kaisen, Yuta Okkotsu's domain expansion is a special ability that allows him to manipulate and control the spatial dimensions within a certain area, effectively creating a domain that he can manipulate at will. This allows him to perform a variety of feats such as creating barriers to block attacks, trapping enemies within his domain, or even distorting space to teleport himself or others short distances. One of the most notable aspects of Yuta's domain is its versatility. He can use it in a variety of different ways depending on the situation, making it an incredibly useful tool for both offense and defense. For example, he can use it to create walls or barriers to protect himself or his allies from attacks, or he can use it to trap enemies within a confined space, making it easier to take them down. Overall, Yuta's domain expansion is a powerful ability that allows him to manipulate the space around him in a variety of ways, making it a valuable asset in battle. Now, with all that out of the way, let's look at Kenjaku's power. Kenjaku is a sorcerer who's been around for over 1,000 years, and during that time he's claimed the bodies and identities of many sorcerers through his body hopping technique, affording him a dire immortality, providing he can get his hands on a body and he isn't killed before he can swap out or during the process. So far, Kenjaku has been an absolute menace to deal with him being able to use multiple techniques including Curse Spirit Manipulation, Gravity Manipulation, Domain Expansion, Reverse Curse Technique, and Maximum Technique known as Uzumaki. Let's get started with Curse Spirit Manipulation, a technique we all know and love from our favorite Toji victim, Geto Suguru. Curse Spirit Manipulation allows the user to absorb Curse Spirit 2 grades or below with no consequences. However, if he wants to get himself some higher grades of spirits, he's gonna have to work for them, as they need to be bested and dominated in combat to be absorbed, or if they're under someone else's control, he'll need to kill the master and then absorb the spirit. As far as we know, there is absolutely no limit to how many spirits he can possess in his arsenal, with him at one point in JJK 0 having 4,461 Curse Spirits available for use in Uzumaki, and we'll get to Uzumaki in a second. After Curse Spirit Manipulation, Kenjaku can use Gravity Manipulation, which we recently learned is none other than Yuji's mother's technique, which is really wild because Kenjaku is technically Yuji's mother, and speaking of giving birth to weird things, next up on the list is Kenjaku's domain expansion, or it might even be Geto's, we're not actually sure. The domain is called Wound Profusion, or depending on where you read it, All Enveloping God Hatu. Honestly, that is a whole ass tongue twister and I probably butchered that name. But currently we don't know what this domain can do or is capable of, but what we do know for sure is that it is one of 2 open barrier domains in the series joining Sukuna's Malevolent Shrine. Swiftly moving on, we have Kenjaku's maximum technique, Uzumaki. This attack allows him to combine every Curse Spirit in his collection into one super condensed attack to fire at his enemy. But where this attack gets interesting is that Kenjaku can add in any grade 1 or above spirit into the mix, and then when he uses the Uzumaki technique, the technique of that grade 1 or higher then becomes his for a one-time use. It's unclear if Kenjaku can store multiple techniques and keep them for emergency uses, but we do know that they can only be used once, and he keeps them for a wild card to throw out the opponent if he is in a dangerous situation. We saw him use Uzumaki multiple times during his fight with Yuki, meaning he doesn't need to use every Curse Spirit in his collection to use this attack. He can only use a handful for a smaller condensed blast. Now, factoring in all these techniques, Kenjaku can also throw hands like a motherfucker. He has incredible battle IQ and an immense amount of cursed energy and a ridiculous amount of experience overall, with him being at least over 1,000 years of age by now. And on top of that, his experience allowed him to use his body as a domain to survive a black hole that Yuki used in a last-ditch effort to take this man out. Now, with all this being said, let's have a little nosy at our boy Yuta Okkotsu, because this man's gonna need everything and the kitchen sink to even consider taking on Kenjaku. Yuta Okkotsu is a prodigy sorcerer and a distant descendant of Michizane Sugawara, who also just so happens to be a distant relative of none other than Gojo Satoru. And speaking of Gojo, Yuta technically has more cursed energy than Gojo. However, where the two differ is that Yuta can officially run out of cursed energy, where Gojo's 6 eyes allows him to use cursed techniques and bring the cost of those techniques infinitely close to zero, making it almost non-existent usage of cursed energy. Over the years, Yuta has become incredibly proficient in hand-to-hand combat, getting in close with the likes of Geto, Yuji, Ryu Ishigori, and even Yuji once stated that Yuta is the complete and polar opposite of him, where Yuji has an extreme amount of natural strength backed up with a small amount of cursed energy reinforcement. Yuta is naturally on the weaker side, so he uses his immense amount of cursed energy to reinforce his body, allowing him to toss a car back that Yuji actually punched at him, which caught Yuji by surprise. Yuta Okkotsu isn't just a solo act. As we all know, he's accompanied by his trusty companion Rika, and as stated by Suguru Geto, Rika is said to have endless cursed energy. While Yuta is maintaining his connection to Rika via the ring on his hand, he's able to use his technique, which is copy basically. And so far we've seen him use sky manipulation, shikigami usage, and curse speech, and there's the potential that Yuta has more copy techniques that we just haven't seen yet, as he has killed other people in the Cullen games and has possibly copied their techniques, he just hasn't pulled them out yet. Yuta is capable of incredible cursed energy output and reverse curse technique, as well as a domain expansion, which is where the AI domain comes in. According to this AI, Yuta's domain is able to do the following while he is inside of it: create walls to block attacks, attack and trap enemies, and also distortion of space so he can teleport himself and others around at will, which reminds me a lot of Todo's Boogie Woogie. And conspiracy theory time, Yuta has fought with Todo in a previous Goodwill event, as stated by Todo, and apparently Yuta single-handedly washed that entire team, so it's potential that Yuta might have seen techniques and has stored them alone. This could be the potential of where this ability comes in to the domain. That's just a theory though. Now, but knowing all this, I'm going to give you my answer as to who I think will win this fight, and it pains me to say it, I think Yuta takes the L in this imaginary scenario, and this is why. Even with all of Yuta's techniques and feats stacking up, they still just don't compare to what Kenjaku has done in his lifetime and what he's done in the series so far. And I'll start with Kenjaku's durability for one. There's been an argument I've seen, which even I've lent into, that Yuta would be able to blitz Kenjaku within the 5-minute time limit that he uses Rika. And I kind of agree with this, because Yuta would have to use his own cursed energy, call upon Rika, use Rika for 5 minutes, and then try and blitz Kenjaku within that time space. And then once that time limit runs out, it's kind of game over for Yuta. That was before we saw Kenjaku taking on Choso, Yuki, and Garuda in an essentially 3-on-1 fight where Kenjaku had his arms blown in half by one of Yuki's kicks, healed it almost immediately, tanked a shot to the head which knocked his skull cap off the top of his noggin, sewed that motherfucker back on while still taking kicks from Yuki herself, and then on top of all this, he even managed to survive a black hole that Yuki used in a last-ditch effort to try and take this man out, and he did that by using his own body as a domain for anti-gravity technique. All of these feats, I can't see Yuta pulling anything out of the bag that is gonna take on this man Kenjaku. When we really think about this fight, Yuta is the prodigal son with youth and vigor on his side, fighting against Kenjaku, the wise and battle-hardened veteran of over 1,000 years. And even in a battle of domains, all of the powers that the AI program has just laid out for us to use, we know that if it came down to a battle of domains, the same thing would happen to Yuta's domain, as it has a barrier in it, and it's exactly what happened to Yuki's simple domain. Now, I know that a simple domain and a domain expansion are not the same thing, but Gojo once stated in explaining domain expansions to Yuji way back when that in a battle of domains, the more refined one will win every time. Out of Yuta and Kenjaku, Kenjaku has had over 1,000 years of time to refine that domain to perfection, and refined it to a point that it became a barrierless domain, something only one other person in this series, and that person being Sukuna, who is arguably neck and neck for strongest in the verse with Gojo, depending on who you ask by the way, has done. So when all is said and done, I just don't see any possible way for Yuta Okkotsu to win this fight with Kenjaku. And the way Gege has set up this fight, and the way he has demonstrated Kenjaku Kenjaku's power and prowess against Yuki and Choso was next level. It really showed the experience of what Kenjaku can do, and as much as it pains me to say it, Yuta Okkotsu just loses this fight currently. But this is just a theoretical fight, and it's only my opinion on it. His real domain in the show and the series may be something even bigger and more powerful than we could possibly have even imagined. Take Akari, for example, and when we finally get to see that domain, you bet your sweet bippy I will be covering it and talking about it in depth. But that is everything from me. Let me know what you think of this theoretical fight in the comments down below, and if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Make sure to keep all your debates civil in the comments down below, okay? I'm looking at you, and I'll catch you guys all in the next one. Much love, big kisses, bye-bye.